Talked about the consulting side, the actual solution. What about the assessment side? So the C3PL, what was your experience in terms of getting quotes from C3PLs and that
Oh,
experience?
yeah. Well, I may have shared this. I don't know, but I'm ready to write to my senator and congressman and ask for the government to step in. I think
Right.
that as the government has set these requirements, which I fully support, I do think that we all need to at least meet a minimum standard. There was no oversight on how those services are to be sold, right?
Right.
And it's interesting because my experience as a business owner is if I want to do business with the government, that's highly regulated, right? And we have to get
Right.
on vehicles, and those prices are reviewed by the government. And I just didn't see that. It was like, okay, you have to do this, and here's the group we've authorized, but then there was no oversight. And so I got quotes anywhere from $5,000 to $53,000 for the same scope of work. It just didn't make
Wow.
any sense.
Wow.
And I got estimates outside of even the recommendations that you all had given me, just, one of those check and verify things, right?
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
and because it was all over the place, I really came back again to you guys and I said, okay, this is what I'm seeing. Who's the expert to get this done, right? Like
Right.
who's not going to take us for our money? And it wasn't the cheapest, but it wasn't the most expensive either that we ended up going with.
Welcome, Tara, to the CMMC Proof Podcast. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
Doing good. It's warming up here in Dallas. We're up around 78 degrees a day. A couple weeks ago, it was negative.
I'm jealous. I just looked out the window and it's snowing.
Whoa.
Yeah, yeah.
Ah,
We are, I think, preparing for Arctic weather this weekend. It's supposed to be like
ooh.
in the negatives, I think, here in Northern
Ooh.
Virginia.
So I see why you have your sweater on.
Oh, yeah, yeah, trying to stay warm.
Understood. So Tara, first I'll start off want to congratulate you. I know that Alcona Consulting is now CMMC Level 2 certified. Congratulations. How's
Yeah,
it feel?
it's awesome. It's great to get that behind us. So huge relief off my shoulders. So very, very happy. And of course, couldn't have done it without your company, Aspire Cyber, and our partners also at ATX Defense. You guys
Right.
made it, I won't say painless, but easier than what I had experienced.
That's the goal. Indeed. So tell us a little bit about Alcana Consulting. What do y'all do?
So we're a federal contracting company. We provide IT support, program management, acquisition and procurement support, so helping contracting officers, helping program offices deliver IT, whether that be systems or network support to the enterprise.
Okay. And do you primarily just support federal agencies, or do you support any private sector companies as well?
We do. We actually have some relationships with some commercial companies that we provision services for. But our
Okay.
bread and butter is typically in federal.
Federal. All right. So with CMMC, that's our primary focus today. Kind of the goal of this segment and then our CMMC Proof podcast is to help defense contractors, federal contractors who are navigating the CMMC requirements like you were before you got level 2 certified. So kind of take us back to when you first heard about CMMC and realized that your organization would need to get level 2 certified. And then we'll dive more into what that journey was like for you.
Okay, well, we primarily operate in defense agencies, and so we were made very early on that that was going to become a requirement. And it's very similar to already requirements that are in our contract for, the FAR requirements. And they just don't say CMMC, but the FAR regulations are there, and they've been there for years. So you already had to comply and be ready to meet cybersecurity regulations. And so early on, I started looking into what all that entails. And for a little while, I was sitting there and watching what industry and Congress decided because the rules were going back and forth, right, about how the audits would be held, what was going to be included. And so I kind of sat back and waited until all of that settled. But when
Okay.
the newer information came out and they started setting dates, especially for any businesses that participate in defense, needing to be accredited by 2027, I think is the ruling, that it was time to start pulling the trigger. And that in itself is when the adventure began. So, Do you want me to dive into that a little bit?
Yeah, let's start with what was the starting point for you once you realize, okay, it's time to pull the trigger. CMMC's real. It's not going away. It's going to impact our organization. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe to set the stage a little bit. So
Please. Yeah.
we're a small business, and when I say small, I think of us as a micro business. We are younger than 5 years, so we do not have overhead. We have folks that work on the contract. Even myself as the owner, I'm still billable, so I'm also working on the contract. So we really don't have overhead. And so I did pull my employees together. I mean, the good thing about us is we're IT driven, and a lot of that is cybersecurity related. And so I pulled our employees together, and we discussed kind of how to go about this. And while I think we could have overcome it and been successful, it's just a lot to tackle on top of being built. And so the timeline continued to split. And we really didn't have any one of us that was an expert in what an auditor may look for. And so it was time for me to start looking for outside resources and other solutions. And so I had started researching. Really what I wanted to find was an enclave that provided these services. Similar to how we would set up services for an agency, you typically have a service provider, you get an enclave provision to you, and then you have to set up the controls within that enclave. I was looking for something like that on the commercial side. And I did find one provider that did that. And so I would say that's kind of my second attempt. My first attempt was to do this internally. I did go down that path of talking to Microsoft, getting the quotes, kind of blown away and thought, no way will I ever accomplish this. And so then started looking for the enclave services. And through that attempt, as I got into it, I realized that business really sold it. Like you could tell there was a sales pitch and then there was like reality, right? And I bought into the sales pitch and I had invested, and then reality hit and there was no services to actually help me implement it. It was really just an environment. And so back to doing research and finding a consultant, which led me to you guys, thankfully. You were my saving grace. And it was really through our conversation, right, that we figured out what would be the best environment. And I did have some reservations, given that, I'm primarily a Microsoft user and Windows-based. And the best and easy button for me would be a Google environment, but it was truly like the easy button, right? All the services came with it. It took that administrative burden off of me as an owner who doesn't have the overhead to assign those roles to somebody else to get in there and set it up and then continue use as it is an administrator. And so collectively, we made the decision to pursue ATX.
Okay. Yeah, you bring up a lot of good points, especially for organization of any size. Once you select the solution you're going to use for your CMMC system, your CUI system, realizing like, okay, maybe this isn't the best option, and still being open to, okay, let's move out of this vehicle and go to another vehicle where it's going to be the best option for us. And then I do think a lot of organizations find themselves there, and hopefully by watching this podcast and getting insight from you, we can help some people avoid that pitfall. But I would definitely commend you that you were open and realized like, okay, we may need to pivot. You realize, hey, we may need to pivot, and that's going to be the best option. And fortunately for your company, you were able to leverage ATX Defense, which is a fully managed enclave hosted in Google Workspace. And that is the easy button. It's the easy button I've seen amongst all the different solutions. But the other point you brought, but with that solution doesn't work for everyone. So for organizations where, let's say, they have to print CUI, now that's going to, I'm not going to recommend ATX for organizations like that. But for organizations that can keep all their CUI in a enclave, in that segmented environment, then yeah, usually that's going to be the cheapest, fastest option for them.
Yeah, and I would advise like some lessons learned or some gotcha points that I would advise owners on are really two things. One is do a no kidding real analysis of whether or not you have to bring that CUI into your company or SCI into your company. Especially on contracts where the government is going to provision you GFE, government furnished equipment, to conduct that business. And if that means that you can keep all of that information within their enclave and not having to bring it in, your scope just got a lot smaller, right? The second thing, I think you have to know something about networks, have to know something about accreditation boundaries, have to know something about the way you're going to conduct business in terms of contract management and acquisition management. And then probably something about quality too, because most companies have a quality manager that then does checks to make sure that, you're meeting standards, especially if you have like ISO certifications and other type of certifications that just keep you on your P's and Q's. I think that you need to form a team to help evaluate what platform makes sense by bringing those members in, unless you've got all of that knowledge yourself. Unless you're like someone like me where you're wearing those 10 different hats, right? Bring that team in or form that team to help you select the right solution.
Understood. Absolutely. And going back to the initial solution you started with, like you said, there was kind of a disconnect between the sales and the actual reality. And, we're certainly seeing a lot of that, especially now in the industry that CMMC is final. And there are a lot of a lot of companies that's pitching themselves as CMMC experts, and our solution is going to be the magic button. What would you recommend for companies in terms of defense contractors, in terms of doing their due diligence and really kind of vetting those companies, things they should do, or consultants prior to making the investment?
I would say what I did is I saw demos of the products. I even read their contract, like what would all be included in scope. But my lesson learned is there's still a difference between what the salesperson is going to tell you and the person who you deal with to actually implement your environment. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important to probably ask for references from other customers and what their experience is, because then you're really going to get to some truth about what their implementation was like. And if you have the opportunity, I think it's worth talking to the engineer that's going to assist you in the environment as well. And then if that's not permitted because there's, the business has chose to separate the marketing team or sales from engineering and business, then get a consultant like Aspire Cyber, right, that has been on both sides of that and understands that domain and really they're there to help you minimize risk by saying, yeah, that's not really how that goes, right? Or that's what they're saying, but this is what is meant, right? Or this is really what's going to happen. I think that was probably the biggest difference. Is once I hired you guys and you helped advise me on that, it became a lot smoother in selecting the right platform and getting the implementation. Because even with the platform, like any new business, you need a translator, right? Until you learn the terms and understand what makes sense to that business. Because, you're just new. I feel like you guys are that translator, right? Or you help that handshake. And so what I may call, my boundary, they may see it as something else. And so you guys really kind of help get in there and interpret what both sides mean to get to success.
Yeah. And one thing where customers like you and us working with you made our job easier because you were really engaging, and you do have that kind of IT technical background. So you had that baseline knowledge, but yeah, you knew what you needed to get done, and you were committed.
I wanted to get it done.
Yeah, you wanted to get it done. So I
made it a priority, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Prioritize it. So it's like, all right, let's do it. We can move as fast as you need to go.
I think I was like I was like setting deadlines, and you were like, oh, I don't know. And I'm like, no, this is what we need to do. So.
Yeah, that was awesome. Did it. Indeed. So we talked about the consulting side, the actual solution. What about the assessment side? So the C3PL, what was your experience in terms of getting quotes from C3PLs and that experience?
Yeah, well, I may have shared this, I don't know, but I'm ready to write to my senator and congressman and ask for the government to step in. I think that as the government has set these requirements, which I fully support, I do think that we all need to at least meet a minimum standard. There was no oversight on how then those services are to be sold, right?
Right.
And it's interesting because my experience as a business owner is if I want to do business with the government, that's highly regulated, right? And we have to get on vehicles, and those prices are reviewed by the government. And I just didn't see that. It was like, okay, you have to do this, and here's the group we've authorized, but then there was no oversight. And so I got quotes anywhere from $5,000 to $53,000 for the same scope of work. It just didn't make any sense. And I got estimates outside of even the recommendations that you all had given me, just, one of those check and verify things, right?
Absolutely.
And because it was all over the place, I really came back again to you guys and I said, okay, this is what I'm seeing. Who's the expert to get this done, right? Like,
Right.
who's not going to take us for our money? And it wasn't the cheapest, but it wasn't the most expensive either that we ended up going with. And again, you guys were right there in my audit with me, right? Making sure, especially there was one question that got asked, and my mind's in 1,000 places. As I mentioned earlier, I served so many roles. So when I got asked the question, I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure we've done that. And then, Edgar just jumped right in and he was like, yeah, Tara, we did this, and it was very evident to the auditor that, yes, we had done it. We explained exactly what we had done. It was just,
Right.
Relying on my memory. I think everything happened yesterday. So, but and so we were able to pass the audit without any issues.
So first time pass. Perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And I mean, it was clear that ATX, who is the service provider that we went with for our enclave, had been doing their work as well, providing all the evidence, has shared that evidence with the auditor, so that when it came in for the actual meeting, the auditor's questions that were remaining were to me as the business in my role in participating in the drills, awareness of what is occurring, the responsibility of the environment, and reviewing my own policy that had to accompany the package that came with it. And so it was very quick, very painless, and we were successful to pass.
Very, very good insights, and that highlights, even with a solution like ATX Defense, CMMC space, that is 100% fully managed, you still have shared responsibilities as a client. So that's what, doing the assessment, that's the portion that the assessors are focused on interviewing you for. And Aspire Cyber, we specialize in CMMC readiness. So this is what we do all day, every day. And we truly pride ourselves on the white glove service, where from start to certification in hand, we're with you every step of the way. And because it is a lot, especially for a small business owner like yourself, where you're wearing a lot of hats, and for just to have that resource, that translator, that Sherpa, as we like to call ourselves, it does help. And it can make a big difference in terms of that experience, because CMMC level 1, I tell people, yeah, you can get level 1 self-assessment. You don't really need to hire a consultant. Level 2 is not a DIY project. If you don't have that specialized expertise in CMMC, then don't go at it alone. Just like I wouldn't try to fix my car by myself. It's not my skill set. I'm gonna take it to the mechanic. Otherwise, it's gonna cost me more money trying to do it myself. So we really try to help our clients identify the most cost-effective solution, because we are vendor neutral, and then also the most cost-effective or best C3PO that's going to be a good fit for that organization, because that is mind-blowing to get quotes from 5,000 all the way to 50,000 for the exact same scope. You're not Lockheed Martin. You're not a big business. So
we really aren't. We're less than 20 employees in our enclave, so it's not big at all. I had a bit of sticker shock when those quotes came in. And then I even asked them. I was like, "Are you confused over the scope? Like, did I miss communicate something?" But it's made a huge difference bringing you guys in. I mean, I have 25 years of rolling out major IT programs, so I can talk cyber, talk engineering, talk network, all of those things. But if you're not intimately knowledgeable about all the controls and what the government is looking for, right, you're probably going to miss the mark on how you interpreted needing to implement that.
Yeah. Awesome. And I'll kind of close out on something that I remember our first conversation. You asked me, you're doing your due diligence. You asked me a lot of questions. Fortunately, I knew the solution you was in, and I knew it would probably be a better option for you. But you kind of ended that conversation was like, okay, it's like, Derrich, I like you. And what's the next steps? And I realized, I'm like, Tara, I like you too. And it just reminds me, like, when you, as a business owner, you get to kind of choose who you work with, and being able to work with someone that you can, okay, I know, like, trust this person, and hey, we're going to be able to conquer whatever this objective is. That makes such a big difference, because I can say I don't get to say that about all our clients, unfortunately, but it is great when you're professionals, you know what the objective is, you're willing to put in the work. So it was definitely a great honor honor and pleasure working with you, and really was excited to see you get certified.
Yeah, I think you were the first to congratulate me. So, it's been a pleasure. I've already recommended you guys to anyone who asked me, even to my DCSA officer. We were having a conversation, and I said, "Oh, I know somebody. I can help you. I can help you refer other small businesses."
Yeah, appreciate it. Now, the last question I have for you, or if you want to share some tips in regards to, insights in terms of saying more and more RFPs coming out from like defense that is requiring level 2 certification. Are you seeing that on your side or from primes?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Even solicitations that didn't get them in time, those requirements, before they're getting awarded, contracting officers are coming back and asking us if we're certified. And we can affirm that we are. So absolutely. And again, these rules are not new rules. They're FAR rules. They're in there. They're just not labeled CMMC. So, if you're not one of those that read your, terms and conditions, they're in there.
They're there. They're hiding in plain sight.
Yeah. It's just, I think the difference is that the government has a way to, assess it, that you're meeting them, that you've met some standard, right? When they've conducted a review that assures them that they've been met. But yes, absolutely, we have seen contracting officers come back and ask that. We are seeing those requirements in solicitations, and not just in the defense side, but other federal.
Wow. Yeah, I saw GSA, the communities came out with their version of CMMC, still with 800-171 aligned to it, but revision 3. And then I've spoken to several defense contractors who've mentioned they've lost out on contracts already because they couldn't demonstrate that they were certified. So it's real. So I'm excited
real.
for
it. It's finally real, like it's a company. Yeah.
But yeah, now you get to focus on growing your company and serving the federal agencies and not be bogged down with all the compliance stuff. So one less hat to wear, at least until 3 years from now, you do reassessment.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Yeah. But it's much easier to maintain, right, than like having to start to get there.
Thanks for watching this CMMC Proof Podcast with Tara from Alcona Consulting. Hope you get some good insight on how to navigate the CMMC requirements. And if you need help, feel free to reach out to Aspire Cyber. We're always happy to have a conversation and kind of point you in the right direction, even if you don't hire us. Good luck to you on your CMMC compliance journey.